Hello and welcome to this edition of World at War. My name is Mohammed Saleh. China's war games over a potential war in the Pacific have acquired a whole new dimension. The latest satellite images now show that China is actually rehearsing to strike at American military bases that are spread across Japan. To this end, China has constructed a military range in the vast expanses of the Taklamakan Desert, where China has built replicas of the American air bases in Japan, such as the Iwakuni and Kadena, where the United States stations its most advanced military assets. What you're looking at in these satellite images are the mock replicas of at least about 20 American F-22 Raptors and F-35 stealth fighter jets. These images, first captured by Google Earth on the 29th of May, indicate that the replicas of the American fighter jets have suffered some significant damage. So what does this mean? Well, it's simple. China has practiced striking at the dummy American fighter jets even when they were stationed along the flight line or in their hangars in Japan, using missile, drone or ground attack simulations. These latest satellite images have sparked an immediate scare in Tokyo, with calls for urgent security reviews. But this is not just one isolated incident, where the Chinese are training to attack American military assets in the region. This dramatic video was released by the Chinese Air Force in September 2020 on its official Weibo platform, and it is the clearest expression of intent of what China is planning for. Chinese bombers that are capable of carrying nuclear weapons are shown to be taking off from a Chinese airbase. And soon enough, the Chinese fighter jets swoop down on a military target that is not named, but which many experts, due to its layout, have described as a spitting image of the American Anderson Air Base in Guam in the middle of the Pacific. The fighter pilot presses the button. A missile then hurtles towards the airbase, resulting in a massive explosion. And the Chinese pilots return home with a satisfied smile on their faces. Now, make no mistake about this, all militaries around the world train for all eventualities. The Americans too carry out their own set of simulations and are preparing for an impending war in the Pacific. What will set off an all-out war between the United States and China in the Pacific is hard to tell. But a Chinese invasion of Taiwan, an autonomously governed island which Beijing considers to be a renegade province of its sovereign territory, is believed to be the most likely bet. There have been repeated Chinese military drills in the Taiwan Strait. Not only do the Chinese fighter jets and warships violate the median line, China has also shown that it can put the autonomously governed island of Taiwan under a complete blockade at will, as happened in the aftermath of Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan in August 2022. The island chain strategy is the fundamental pillar with which the United States has sought to hem China down in the Pacific. Japan is a pivotal part of the United States' first island chain, which also includes the Kuril Islands, the Ryukyu Islands, Taiwan, Northern Philippines and Borneo. The second line of defense for the Americans in the containment of China includes the Bonin and Volcano Islands, Guam, which is part of the Mariana Islands, Yap and Palau, which are part of the Caroline Islands, and also Western New Guinea. The third island chain is the final part of the American strategy. This island chain begins at the Aleutian Islands and then runs south across the center of the Pacific Ocean towards Oceania, through the Hawaiian Islands, American Samoa and Fiji, till it reaches New Zealand. In any eventual war between the United States and China, Japan, as a close ally of the United States, will be dragged right into the middle and could bear the brunt of the devastation, whether it likes it or not. As we speak at this moment, the United States has stationed over 171,000 active duty military troops in over 800 military bases across 178 countries. Of these, the highest number of American soldiers stationed on foreign soil are in Japan, where the United States maintains over 59,000 troops spread across 120 bases. The last decade has witnessed a steady and an almost inexorable shift in the balance of power in the Pacific. Starting from 2014, in a span of a decade, China has built the world's biggest navy that can take on the navy of any other nation in its own backyard. In fact, retired American General Mark Milley, who served as America's 20th chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, has openly admitted that the United States will lose any war that is fought in the Pacific with China. American ships can boast of a superior tonnage, but the Chinese in their backyard have enough ships and missiles to force a humiliating American retreat. To avert this possibility, the current US Indo-Pacific commander, Admiral Samuel Paparov, has come up with a new strategy called Unmanned Hellscape to overcome the Chinese superiority in numbers. The Americans are now pouring in billions of dollars to put in place thousands of unmanned systems that include surface vessels, submersibles, and aerial drones to fight the invading Chinese forces as soon as they begin to cross the Taiwan Strait, effectively acting as a barrier before a land invasion of Taiwan. According to Admiral Samuel Paparov, this new strategy would make the Chinese military miserable, and it would buy the Americans enough time to respond to any Chinese aggression with greater preparedness. Now, wars are fought and won on the basis of superior technology and logistics. The United States is already embroiled in two bruising wars in Ukraine and in the Middle East. And what will unfold in the Western Pacific will depend to a very large extent on when Beijing decides to militarily invade Taiwan. The use of drones on the battlefield has changed modern warfare. Drones are small, very economical, and can strike with deadly accuracy at military hardware that can cost millions of dollars. But how does one counter these drones that in the last few years have turned the economy of war on its head? Well, the answer lies in the use of laser guns that can knock a drone out of the sky at the cost of a few dollars. And this week, South Korea announced that it is mass-producing a low-cost laser weapon that can knock drones out of the sky at the cost of just $1.5 per strike. There are several nations at the moment, like Russia, the United States, Israel, and Britain, who are all developing laser weapons. But South Korea is the first one to admit that it will be deploying these laser-based weapons in an active conflict zone to stop North Korean projectiles. But how effective are these laser weapon systems? Our next report gets you the details. This laser weapon is called Block 1. Developed by South Korea's Defense Acquisition Program Administration, this laser weapon can shoot down small drones with remarkable efficiency. The laser beam is practically invisible and noiseless. No separate variety of ammunition is required. The laser gun can be operated so long as electricity is available. And the best part about this laser weapon is it can bring down a drone with a laser shot at the cost of just $1.5. Yes, you heard that right. If Block 1 performs as its developers say it would, knocking a drone out of the sky will become extremely economical. South Korea claims Block 1 so far has a strike rate of 100% and will be deployed along the North Korean border to bring down projectiles that North Korea sends across the DMZ. But Block 1 is just the beginning of South Korea's Star Wars project. Seoul is also developing Block 2, a bigger variety of the laser gun that will have a longer range and will be able to shoot down not just the slow-moving drones, but even the fast-moving fighter jets and missiles. The Russia-Ukraine war and the war in the Gaza Strip have thrown up a peculiar problem. Shooting down drones that cost thousands of dollars with interceptor missiles that cost millions of dollars is a recipe for bankruptcy. Israel's Iron Dome was rendered ineffective by Hamas merely by firing thousands of crude missiles and drones. So Israel too has been developing its own unique laser interception system. This video, tweeted by Naftali Bennett, the then Prime Minister of Israel in April 2022, will give you a glimpse of the technology Israel is developing. Called the iron beam, the interceptor system has an effective range of 7 kilometers. The laser beam can reach energy levels of as much as 10 kilowatts with a focus diameter of a coin. The iron beam is effective against drones, rockets and mortars, and a single laser shot costs no more than $3.50. In fact, on the 13th of April 2024, when Iran launched a barrage of missiles and drones over Israel, Tel Aviv resorted to the use of its laser iron beam to shoot down the Iranian projectiles. But there is no official information on how successful the Israeli laser beam interceptions were. The former British Defence Secretary, Grant Shapps, in March 2024 boasted of Britain's underdevelopment laser beam that can intercept targets at the speed of light. Called the Dragonfire, this laser beam can be based on ground or even be deployed on ships. In less than 4 seconds of exposure on the target, the laser beam can burn the drone's electronics and knock it down. But it will be at least another 3 years before this piece of British technology is used in active combat. The United States has been using high-powered lasers since at least 2014. The optical dazzler interdictor Navy, otherwise known as Odin, was installed on the Arleigh Burke-class destroyers such as the USS Ponce for field testing. It is one thing to strike out and knock down stationary or slow-moving targets, but to bring down the zipping missiles and fighter jets from a distance is no mean technological challenge, because the laser beams no doubt move at the speed of light, but they must be focused on a moving projectile long enough to fry its electronics to put it out of action. All these laser weapons have a limited effective range, but Russia in its claims goes one step further. The Russian laser weapon, called the Peresvet, is not just an air defense laser beam. Russia boasts that this also has anti-satellite capabilities. First unveiled in 2018, at least 5 units of the Peresvet are said to be in active duty at the moment to take down enemy drones and missiles. Laser beam weapons have so far largely remained a part of the science fiction, but the coming days will show us how effectively they actually are in real combat situations. Haiti's biggest hospital is just a stone's throw away from the presidential palace in Port-au-Prince. But for over 5 months, the General Hospital in Port-au-Prince was in the clutches of criminal gangs. Forget the common people, the doctors and other administrative staff. Even the security forces of Haiti were not in a position to take control of the hospital buildings. But the first contingent of the United Nations-backed forces, which arrived in June in Haiti, appears to have changed the security situation in Port-au-Prince for the better. After a pitched gunfight on the 7th of July, the Haitian police, who were backed by the United Nations contingent, predominantly made up of soldiers from Kenya, managed to drive out the criminal gangs from the hospital premises. But how significant is the retaking of Haiti's biggest hospital from the criminal gangs? And does it indicate a turning of tide in Haiti's security situation? Our next report gets you more details.
The Haitian police stormed the General Hospital in Port-au-Prince on the 7th of July, armed with heavy weapons. And backed by the disciplined contingent of United Nations forces from Kenya, the Haitian police engaged the criminal gang members for several hours, before eventually the gang members fled from the hospital compound. For the first time in 5 months, Port-au-Prince's General Hospital was free of the criminal gangs. The gang members had completely ransacked the hospital. There were bullet marks everywhere. The newly selected Haitian Prime Minister, Gary Coney, who turned up a couple of days later to take stock of the situation, insisted that the Haitian government will restore the hospital soon.
For It's really important for us to regain control of our hospital. In every country in the world, hospitals are not war zones. They're not conflict zones and they're not confrontation zones either. They're places where people who are ill come to get treatment for their health. People who are already in a vulnerable situation have come to be treated. It should not be a war zone and we will not accept that.
Port-au-Prince's General Hospital used to be a bustling hub, serving more than 1,500 patients on a day-to-day basis. But the criminal gangs have now rendered it inoperable. The hospital is unlikely to be functional again till February 2025. The first quarter of 2024 has been the deadliest for the Haitians, with more than 2,500 people being killed in gang violence. More than 580,000 people have been internally displaced. And more worryingly, almost 30 to 50% of the criminal gangs now have minors in their ranks, pointing to a trend that minors are increasingly joining the criminal gangs. To make ends meet in these times of economic collapse and endemic lawlessness, criminal gangs have also upended the supply lines. Price of rice, cooking oil and fish has soared by over 50% in the last 3 months, and there has been an acute shortage of fuel for more than a year. People who have been driven out of their homes are the worst affected.
This is the way we live, sitting here every day. There is no food unless an organization sends us something to eat. After that, there isn't anything else. They gave us some soap and toothpaste to brush our teeth and kits with other things. Then we can wash our clothes with this soap. This is life without work or trade.
5 million people, that is half the population of Haiti, is said to be food insecure. The arrival of the United Nations-backed forces to help the Haitian forces to quell the menace of the criminal gangs has infused a sense of optimism. The retaking of the General Hospital in Port-au-Prince is the first step. But it will be a long and hard struggle to break the back of the criminal gangs who have rendered Haiti into a lawless nation after the assassination of Jovenel Moïse in 2021.
At least 32 people were killed and 42 others were grievously wounded in a string of suicide attacks in the northeastern Nigerian town of Gwaza on the 29th of June. Saturday's attacks by suspected female suicide bombers targeted a wedding, a hospital and a funeral. It was one of the worst attacks in the region in years, a reminder of the dark days of Nigeria's long-running struggle with the Islamist militants. Though no group has so far claimed responsibility for the attacks, the needle of suspicion points towards Boko Haram, which is active around Gwaza. The terror of suicide bombings had faded in recent memory, but the attacks have precipitated a rude awakening.
The northeastern Borno state in Nigeria is at the center of a 15-year Islamist insurgency. More than 40,000 people have been killed. And another 2 million people have been displaced by fighting, which started in 2009. Suicide attacks, including by women, have always been part of the militants' modus operandi, which reared its ugly head again on Saturday. The first attack, around 3 p.m., took place during a wedding ceremony, when a suicide bomber set off explosives among the guests.
The incident happened at about 3 p.m. at a wedding we were attending, when a lady came holding 2 children's hands, and then we heard the explosion.
As funeral prayers for the victims of the wedding attack were being conducted, another female suicide bomber detonated her device. The carnage continued a few minutes later as a teenage girl near the city's general hospital blew up another device.
I personally lost 3 of my friends instantly there at that first blast. Thereon, afterwards, some people now started for the funeral of one of the 3 that I lost. At the funeral ground, another one also blasted. Afterwards, as the DG SEMA said, because I spoke with him personally, he said they were preparing a rescue mission at the General Hospital Goza when another one blasted instantly in the hospital.
Reportedly, a fourth suicide attack targeted a security post, killing 3 people, including a soldier. Nigeria's Vice President Kashim Shettima paid a visit to the Saturday attack's victims undergoing treatment at a specialist hospital in Maiduguri, capital of the Borno state.
So far, 32 people lost their lives. 42 were injured were brought from Goza. Out of them, 2 died. So far, 14 have been discharged and the remaining 26 are in the hospital. By God's grace, the government of Borno state will do its best to ensure it supports and takes care of them.
Boko Haram and its splinter group Islamic State West Africa Province, or ISWAP, are the most active militant groups in the Borno state. They aim to establish a caliphate in the northeast of Africa's most populous nation. At the height of the conflict in 2014, Boko Haram insurgents had seized Gwoza after taking over parts of Borno state. In the same year, 276 mostly Christian schoolgirls were abducted by Boko Haram from Chibok, a few kilometers from Gwoza. Nearly 100 of those girls still remain in captivity. A year later, the Nigerian army recaptured the town with the help of Chadian forces. Though the capabilities of the militant group has been dented, they still carry out deadly attacks against civilians and security forces. Saturday's audacious and coordinated attacks are yet another grim reminder of the security challenge being faced by President Bola Tinubu's government.
With that, it's a wrap on this edition of World at War. And if you want to reach out to me with any comments, feedback or suggestions, please feel free to do so on the ID that you're seeing on your screens. I'm your host, Mohammed Saleh, and I'll see you again next week.